So, hello, my name is David Turner and this is another Lunar Poetry Short, and today I'm joined by Michael Curran of Tangerine Press. Hello, Michael.
Hello there, David.
And we're in Tooting.
We are indeed.
Town, isn't it?
We
keep calling
yes.
it Wimbledon, but it's because the dog track's next door.
Yeah, it's very close to the dog track. Yeah.
We're going to start with Michael giving us a brief history of the press and binding shop.
Okay. Well, I started Tangerine Press. It'll actually be 10 years ago as of next year. I'll be celebrating 10 years in 2016. And the idea was to publish what I would call, for want of a better term, underground poetry, prose, and then I moved into photography as well. But I was more interested in hand-bound limited editions, hardcover with acid-free papers, all the rest of it. And so I was doing that for about 7 or 8 years in my own time, because I was a full-time self-employed carpenter for many years. And then my circumstances changed a couple of years ago, and I thought, well, I'll just go full-time into the press and see what happens. So with that sort of major change in my life, I've got a full workshop now instead of just my front room, which I was doing for many years, as I've said. So now I've got a proper workshop in an industrial estate in Tooting, as you said, and along with the hand-bound editions, I've started doing high-quality paperbacks as well that get full distribution into the bookshops across the country, across the world, just to sort of prop up what I'm trying to do with the limited editions as well. Just get a broader appeal, get more collectors, and get more people interested in poetry in particular, and also prose and photo books and generally other unusual projects that I get involved in.
I'm going to ask a heavily leading question now, but why would you start a small press of this nature?
Well, it's two factors, because like I've said, I was a carpenter for many years, 16 years or whatever, and so I was always making things, which most of the time I enjoyed. But I also read a lot, and I wanted to combine the two, so I learned how to bookbind, and then I was stuck for a couple of years because I didn't know who to publish, and then and that sort of led me into sort of, obviously I always enjoy reading poetry in particular, but I started reading these poets, dead and alive, and new and not known or lost to the past, and looking at them in a different way in terms of, could I publish these people, or is there anything there that stirs me enough to want to commit time and money to these writers and getting their work out there. And that's really what I wanted to do.
I was going to talk about the subject of publishing poetry in a bit, but since you brought it up, I may as well ask the question now. So one, it's why would you start a press like this, which is quite a lot of work for financially, it wouldn't be as much gain, I assume.
No.
And two, why would you then double your hassle by printing fucking poetry?
I'm sort of not making it easy for myself. I mean, it's, I just, like I say, I just enjoy making books and publishing poetry that I love, and I have to be sort of committed to it and really enjoy it to sort of want to use all that time and money, in my own time, as it was for many years, just to get that work out there. So that's really what I was doing there. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely understand the link between, because my background's in carpentry as well.
I
served an apprenticeship, and I still find it really hard to, I can't draft poems on the iPad or anything. I have to have a pen that I'm comfortable with. I have to have paper that I'm comfortable with writing on with that pen. Do you think there's a general resurgence in interest in crafts in that way, and using the appropriate tools for the appropriate
I think
job?
there is, it certainly is. And I think in terms, just to broaden it out to other publishers, I mean, even the big publishers are doing limited editions, handbound, like Faber have started doing it this year, I think. And which is interesting, and I think there really is a resurgence of it. I was in Foyles on Charing Cross Road the other day, and there was I saw an advert for a bookbinding course that they're running there, and I think there is but it's a very sort of murky, muddy waters for publishing and writing at the moment, because everyone's banging on about ebooks and Kindles, and now we're reading that the sales are dramatically dropping off, and of all things, paperback sales have gone up. which is that was the whole idea of ebooks, was to supersede paperbacks. But I think it's still a physical world. People still want tactile objects, that they can read from, as opposed to just a dull flat screen that is with no personality to
Waterstones
it.
recently stopped selling Kindles, didn't they?
Oh, I didn't know
them
that.
at all now,
Oh, really? Yeah.
I suppose it may just be that the people that are comfortable reading Kindles, perhaps own Kindles and tablets, so they don't need to keep restocking that.
Yeah.
And that's maybe, if there has been a resurgence in paperback books, it might be that Kindles have just reached a plateau rather than falling out of favour. But it's maybe found its natural level.
Well, this is it. It's all about getting the levels, like you're saying. It is all about coexistence. People assume I'm a bookbinder and I sort of publish sort of niche writers and poetry and all the rest of it, that I'm sort of anti all that. I'm not. It's all about coexistence. It's what suits you. Because the bottom line is, writing whatever format you do on a piece of toilet paper or a Kindle or on a hand-bound limited edition that costs £500, but the important thing is the writing comes through in any format. It doesn't really matter. It's really what suits you. I'm not sort of slamming down any other formats or any other publishers or anything like that. This is what I'm interested in, and therefore I do it.
Just a note to the listeners: we're in a proper factory, so you might be able to hear water running through a pipe, but we're not in any danger, so it's fine. We'll continue.
I've got used to that noise. That's why I didn't say anything.
Didn't even notice it. No. It's the kind of thing that really you pick it up well on the mic, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, we're very close to the River Wandle, so it's not the River
Actually,
Wandle leaking through.
So where we are is based the Garrett Lane Industrial Estate.
Yeah, it's Garrett Business Park off Garrett Lane,
which is where the
Tooting.
Wimbledon Art Studios are, and they have open days, and it's probably worth everyone coming down to check out. There's a lot of great little businesces down there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, it's you got Wimbledon Art Studios just up the road, and but it's just because my workshop is actually inside a printer's warehouse. I rent space at the back, but there's it's just all sorts along here, just a sort of traditional industrial estate.
In general, what do you think the health of small presses like this is in the country?
Oh gosh,
I mean it's a very broad question, but I mean just compared to when you started, perhaps. Yeah,
I mean it's always been a very strong sort of loyal following. I've been really lucky, more or less from day one. I had regular collectors who were just buying up 2 copies of everything, because that's what a lot of collectors do. They buy one to stash and one a reading copy. So I think small presses. I mean, there's the variations within that, isn't there? Because you've got small presses that do things like I do, which is the bookbinding and all the rest of it, in addition to just bringing out new writing or lost classics or whatever you want to call them. But there's the other publishers that are more sort of commercially minded, that don't do the sort of artisan side of things. But then that's also changing as well, because I know we're going to talk about this a bit later, but with commissions, I do get a lot of other publishers come to me because they want to do limited editions of successful books or books they're particularly keen on.
Yeah.
And so I'm,
actually, we could talk about that just quickly. Is that becoming more common, that larger publishers will use smaller presses for limited editions? Is there much outsourcing in that way?
Not really. It's hard to say, because with the only other strong example I can think of is Faber, because they're still independent, but they're very big, aren't they? But they've just started doing limited editions themselves. But as far as I can make out, they're publishing them themselves. Obviously, they have a bookbinding firm to put the books together for them. But I think that's. But it's all just constantly moving and muddling around with all publishers, even the huge publishers. Like I've said, they'd started doing limited editions, signed. Just suddenly in the last year or two, it's good for them, because you don't have to wait for a distributor to pay for paperback sales, because sometimes you have to wait a few months for that.
Okay.
Whereas with the hand-bound editions, they're generally direct from the publisher, which is what Tangerine does, and you're getting your sort of investment back straight away, or pretty much straight away.
Next, I'd like to talk about previous projects that you've completed at Tangerine, and if there's any in particular that you're really proud of.
Yeah, I mean, the one I've just finished. I mean, I'm proud of all of the books I've published, because there would be no point in me getting involved in any project if I wasn't 100% committed to, what if I was definitely enjoying what I was reading and believed in the work. But yeah, the book I've just done, Seeing Richard, which is a collection of photos by Eric Webber that he took of Richard Brautigan from 1963 to 1978. And they're just most of the pictures have never been seen before, and it was introduced by William Hjortsberg, who wrote the huge Brautigan biography Jubilee Hitchhiker, which is an amazing book. So he wrote the introduction, and also Jarvis Cocker's a big fan of Richard Brautigan. He regularly promotes him on his BBC Six Music show, and he wrote the foreword for it. So I'm really chuffed that came together. But again, these things. I originally started talking about that a year and a half ago, so it's relatively long time. That's what I mean about I have to be believing in the work, because the amount of time, sometimes it's a lot longer, when you're trying to get rights for an author that's deceased or something, and you have to go through the estate and all the rest of it. It can drag on quite a long time, so you have to be really into it to want to publish it. But yeah, I suppose the most important book to me and the Tangerine is the William Wantling collections that I've done, and the one in particular this year, In the Enemy Camp. Well, William Wantling was maybe familiar to some people as a contemporary poet of Charles Bukowski. They had a really peculiar friendship that sort of went on through the mail, through letters, and they did eventually meet, but it was an absolute disaster. But yeah, Wantling was born in 1933 in a small town in Illinois, and quite a regular upbringing. He joined the Marines at 17, went to the Korean War for 1 year, where he apparently got injured and was treated with morphine, and he was honourably discharged after getting to the rank of sergeant when he was 20, I think. And but he still had a craving for morphine. It triggered something in him. So he was in the mid-50s in California, where he was dropped off, and he immediately got into heroin. And his soon-to-be sort of first wife was an addict as well, and they used to. It's kind of, I don't want to romanticize it, but they had a kind of a Bonnie and Clyde relationship. They would sort of rob convenience stores and mug people. It's all pretty nasty, but that's how they live. They're addicted. But Wantling eventually got caught and ended up in San Quentin prison for 5 years for forging scripts and possession. And it was in prison that he started to write, and so by this time he's in his early 30s, I think. And then he was released from prison, returned to a small town in Illinois, was divorced while he was in prison, had a son that he never saw from that first marriage, and he married again to Ruthie Wantling, who I'm in touch with, who's an amazing woman. She's still around, and I went to see her earlier this year in Illinois. And he became a English lecturer, but he still had a lot of addiction problems. He was still really into his booze and was smoking a lot of marijuana and all that kind of stuff. And so he was lecturing, but he died because he was, just had a really bad lifestyle, really unhealthy, and he died when he was 40 in 1974. But his writing is extraordinary. I think he gets unfairly compared to Bukowski, but he's got a broader scope. He's he talks about career, he talks about addiction and prison, all that kind of stuff, so it's quite raw, and he's nowhere near as prolific as Bukowski, but what work he has produced is just as on an equal standing, I think. And I did a definitive collection called In the Enemy Camp, and that was introduced by forward by Thurston Moore, who's a big fan of Wantling's work, so that was a great bonus to get him involved.
I suppose that's the whole point with businesses like this, and no matter how much hard work's involved, or how much time, how time consuming they are, you do get to work on projects that you're passionate about, and you're clearly very enthusiastic about.
It
must be quite a big pleasure to be able to put together a really nice edition of his work. And,
well, this is it. It's just
go out into the world. And
it's the whole process. Just like you can go, because do everything from obviously not the writing, but sort of go through it, design the books themselves, choose all the papers.
Actually, since we were talking about like the process and how long it can take, maybe we could talk a bit more generally about not so much. I think calling it the commissioning process is probably a bit misleading, but if anyone was to approach Tangerine Press and wanted to put together an edition, what would be involved?
Well, generally the situation is either a gallery or a publisher, or even very occasionally individuals come to me and want to produce a book. So it's just a case of giving them the options. You can go full on with a hardcover, handbound edition, limited and signed and all the rest of it, which is the most expensive. Obviously, you can do slip cases and clamshell boxes and all the rest of it, whatever they want. And then it goes right through to chapbooks, which are, if people aren't familiar with that term, it's, if you can imagine a pamphlet, but a hand sewn version of a pamphlet. But a chapbook is a stiff card cover instead of, with the pamphlet being all the same paper all the way through. The cover is the same.
It's like a really good quality zine with a card cover.
Yeah, but it's hand
sewn together.
Yeah, with nice papers, and I can emboss the covers. I've got an embosser here. I'm just looking at it now. It's a half-ton of 1960s cast iron Marshall embosser, which is a wonderful bit of equipment that's been refurbished by a friend of mine. And I've got numerous presses here, just nipping presses, finishing presses, hand tools. So yeah, with the commissioning, it can go from a very simple chapbook right the way through to full-on edition.
Yeah, but I suppose the benefit of coming to a press like this is that you're available to talk the whole process.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If people don't know about paper, weights of paper, methods of binding, at least they can come and get advice right the way through.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as just approaching you and asking you to put something together.
Yeah, exactly. I can go through the whole process and then come and visit me in my workshop.
You recently put together a pamphlet for Jodie Porter at Well Versed for one of the live events, and how did that? What sort of process did Jodie just entrust you with putting something together? Or?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it was in that instance. I actually, he was doing a Well Versed event for the Peckham Literary Festival at the Review Bookshop, and I saw he was doing that, and there's a really great list of poets he had lined up, and I got in touch with him, which is quite unusual, and I said, look, do you want me to do like a limited edition free chapbook for for the people reading, and also for any people who came along to sort of listen. And that was a very simple process. He just said, yeah, let's do it, and he gave me the manuscripts of there's one poem from each of the 9 poets reading that night, so he just sent them over to me. He said what order they wanted them in, and I just designed everything and sent over a proof. And that was essentially it. He sort of left me to it, and it was great fun. It was really good to be involved in something like that, because it's a local thing, and Jodie's got very good taste in poetry. And
so just in case anyone doesn't know, Well Versed is the poetry section in the Morning Star.
In the Morning Star, didn't say that. Yeah.
Which is it the only?
I think it's the only
socialist publication.
I think it's in the world.
Country, but in the world, possibly.
I think it is in the world. Yeah.
And they publish some really good poetry in that.
Yeah, they do.
It's nice that the event is now attached to, there's some sort of printed version of.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to do, because I did something similar in Leicester last year.
I think they could only get about 4 people in the audience. the review bookshop's tiny.
I know it is, but they did it in the basement. Which
did they?
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, it was really well attended. Yeah. There was good good amount of people. I was quite impressed. But yeah, I only suggested that just to go back to it a little bit, because I was involved in a festival last year up in Leicester, and again, actually, someone asked me to do a little gratis chapbook for that, and I was happy to do it. And then that's what made me think of approaching Jodie for this.
And what does the future hold for Tangerine Press? You mentioned the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, well, next year I'm going to do. I always find this is the one thing I find hard to get time for, is to organise events, book launches, which is terrible because I should be doing more of them. But yeah, next year is 10 years of Tangerine Press, so I'm intending to celebrate quite a lot. And I've already been going out meeting people and going to nice independent bookshops and talking about launching books there and doing readings and just trying to get out there a bit more. And so that's sort of launch and event type of thing. I'll be updated on the website. But in terms of publications, I'll be doing more books with Billy Childish that I've done quite a lot of work with in the past. So it's more poetry collections from him. Also, I'll be doing later in the year a collection of essays by Ian Sinclair, who actually wrote the introduction for a reissue of Jack London's The People of the Abyss that we published last year. So I'm really excited about that, because I think Ian's a fascinating man and got such an amazing outlook on London the way he looks at things. So I'm really excited about that. But then there's new writers coming out. A fella called Chris Wilson. He's done a few poems, but he's more short stories, and he's an artist as well, a painter. So that'll be a very interesting book later in the year from him, like a proper full collection of short stories. But it's essentially everything that's coming up that I can tell you about. There's other books that I've got lined up that I can't talk about because I'm still looking for rights, because they're sort of lost in the ether of the 1970s, and I'm really excited about them because they're just genuinely lost classics, and everyone's forgotten about them, and I think they're equal to there's one book in particular that I'm really keen on. It's along the lines of John Healy's The Grass Arena. I don't know if you know that. It was a sort of quite raw, sort of homeless autobiographical novel. I think it's just as good as that, if not better, and everyone's forgotten about it. And there's a fascinating publication story behind it as well as being an amazing piece of writing. So there's a lot going on.
Oh, great! And I'll be tweeting and putting stuff on Facebook as Tangerine Press events happen as well.
Yeah. Maybe I should say the website as well. If anyone,
if anyone wants to get hold of you to check out what you're doing, what you're binding, and also if they want to get anything bound themselves, then they can get you at
eatmytangerine.com.
And you're on Twitter.
I am at Tangerine Press.
Tangerine Press, and but all those links will be under this video.
Have we said enough about poetry? Do you want to talk a bit more about?
No, I've had enough of poetry. Everyone knows that. I'm talking to a poet this afternoon. For that. No, I think it's good to also remember that poets have other projects, and even though this podcast is aimed at poets, people are, most people are writing prose as well. Most people are putting together things. A lot of people are working as editors, and this, I think hopefully they'll find this.
It's a broader appeal. So,
get in touch with Tangerine. All right, thank you, Michael.
Lovely stuff.
Much. Cheers. And shaking hands now. You can't see it. Go away.